Thank you. Well, good morning. And that was a very good segue. I'm honored to be here. I feel very privileged to be back where my roots started at St. Mike's. And when Dr. Chow asked me to come and speak, I also recognized as I reflected that when someone asks you to speak about your career, it means that you've been doing it for some time. So it's sort of an aging moment at the same time. So this will be very personal. It's my personal journey where my career has gone. I want to share some experiences, some difficult situations, and basically my goal here is to show you that if you are looking for opportunities outside of sonography, they are truly endless.
But you're not leaving.
There's many ways and avenues your career can take you, and I hope you find this inspirational. So my name, like Dr. Chow said, is Nadia Bozzo. I started my so I'll take you back from where I started. So I started my academic journey at the University of Waterloo. I studied health science. And I knew at that time I wanted to work in the medical field. I just had no direction as to what and where. So in my last year of undergraduate studies, I took a cardiac-focused course. And that's where I found the heart and hemodynamics incredibly interesting. I was exposed to different types of imaging, and I really decided this is what I need to pursue. So following my graduation, I moved back home, which was to Hamilton, Ontario. And there actually was an advertisement for the diagnostic cardiology program that was being offered at McMaster through Mohawk. And I immediately applied and was eager to learn more about ultrasound. To date me even more, I was actually part of the first class, which hits its 25th anniversary this year. So I started the DCS program, which like any new program had a few challenges, but overall the program ran really well. We had a lot of hands-on time. And at the end of our theory, we all were placed into clinical settings. At that time, they were putting us in one clinical setting for your entire duration. I believe now it's at least two. So this was a great opportunity for those who were placed in large academic centers and had an opportunity to learn and see a lot. But by the luck of the draw, I was placed in a small clinic in Richmond Hill. It was a great experience. I had great mentors to learn from there. But as my placement came to an end, I grew more anxious as I knew there was a lot of pathology that I hadn't seen. I worry also that with this limited exposure, who would hire me? And actually, I never had dealt with any really sick patients. So, and the other goal of mine was to understand where I wanted to end up in the medical field, and not being in a hospital, I felt like I was lacking that opportunity as well. But fortunately, I had a first interview. My very first interview was here at St. Mike's. I was super excited to be in a university teaching hospital that performed cardiac surgeries. I was also extremely nervous as I knew that, my exposure to pathology that would hardly be part of the day-to-day at St. Mike's, I had no exposure to. So my interview went well. I was very transparent on how green I was, but I was very clear on how I wanted to learn. So I moved into a second interview where I was asked to scan a patient. And let me paint this picture. They set me up in a room. I anxiously awaited my patient to walk in, but to my surprise, they wheeled in an inpatient who was on a stretcher, on oxygen, attached to an IV pole, and was non-coherent. And I vividly remember this to this day, that I thought that was it. Okay, well, this is impossible, and I'm never going to get this job. I've never seen anyone this ill. I've always been able, my patients always walked in at the clinic. I was always able to communicate with them, prop them up on their side to get optimal images. But instead of dwelling, I focused on what I did know. And I remember walking the charge tech at the time through what I expected to see within each window. And thankfully, this patient had incredible subcostal windows. And I remember telling her that I would try to get everything I could from this one window. And later, after I was hired, she did tell me, because I had used that, I'm going to do everything I can and work with what I had, was one of the reasons why I passed the scan part of the interview. So I worked at St. Mike's for 6 years, almost 6 years, just over 5.5. Many of my hours of my first year, I spent sitting in the reading room with the echocardiologists and fellows, listening to anything that they would teach me, reviewing exams, asking what I could do better, having them explain to me what they needed from me and why. And really, I would encourage everyone, if you have the opportunity, especially if you are early in your career, this is something I would encourage you to do. Here is where I not only learned, where I got to see cool pathology, interesting valve cases, and understand the need for further investigations during my exams, but it was an opportunity to get one-on-one time with the team and get really good feedback. I also got to learn about TEs. So remember, worked in a clinic and I had never been exposed to TEs. So they spent a lot of time walking me through the views and why. And with a site that was offering valve surgeries and treatments, we worked alongside many valve companies, valve device companies, where we would do serial exams on their valves, following very strict protocols that were used to validate the efficiency of the prosthetic valves. So these cases were extremely long. And I remember having the protocol on my lap, scanning the patient. Remember, we were on videotape at the time. Measurements had to be really precise. And often they required the same sonographer to perform the study. I really did learn a lot through that. I was also very fortunate that we were a research site for contrast. At that time, contrast was a new thing. And under the leadership of Dr. Liang Poi, we learned as sonographers what contrast was, how it could benefit our patients, how it could reduce return echoes, the need for TEs, how it would provide more diagnostic validation for LV function and rule out thrombi. And at this point is when I truly, I think, hit a pivotal moment that I knew that my love for technology and how it was evolving would always keep this career interesting. So in the early 2000s, there was interest for our lab to become accredited. It was a new thing, and not many labs in Canada had gone through the process. Our chief at the time had requested that we become an accredited lab. They brought forth the idea to the team and requested support from the sonographers. I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know what it stood for. But I figured it was a good opportunity to learn more, involve myself on the administrative side, and be a part of an initiative to help make our lab more efficient while keeping our standards very high. So I decided to participate. Unlike today, where evaluators come to your lab and evaluate the work, at that time, accreditation involved sending in your cases and a lot of paperwork. We were on videotape, like I told you, so in those days, finding the right part of the exam to submit was a very tedious yet rewarding opportunity. Taking this opportunity as a new challenge allowed me to work one-on-one with every sonographer and cardiologist in our lab. I also learned about standardization. I paid more attention to ergonomics. And after a good year of work, we became one of the first labs in Canada to be accredited by ICAO. At that time, there wasn't even a Canadian governing body. A truly rewarding experience. So being a teaching center, we had a regular rhythm of residents like you do today come through the lab to learn, which gave us the opportunity to teach. And I truly am a firm believer that nothing solidifies your knowledge better than when you get to teach what you know to someone else. So we also were asked to expand our teaching capabilities and take on some more sonography students. I knew this was something I wanted to do and be a part of to ensure students were exposed to this incredible place with so much expertise to allow them to grow and to be ready for their professions. So I encourage you to share your expertise when possible. Let others challenge your work. That's how we learn. Be ready to learn and always ask questions. So when our lead sonographer, at the time, my mentor, retired from St. Mike's, she started working part-time for GE as a contractor. And she reached out to me one day as GE was looking for a full-time clinical application specialist. She knew how much I loved being on the leading edge of technology and learning new tools. She had watched my journey of doing new things at the hospital, and she thought it was a really good opportunity for me. You know, although it would remove me from hands-on scanning, my passion for teaching and learning the latest that technology had to offer was really the perfect next step in my career. And I remember her telling me that I would never be bored in this role because there was always something to learn. The GE team was looking for sonographers who had a passion for teaching, who understood the echo guidelines, who could manage their time well, who understood what tools are required to perform our jobs optimally, who had a zest for learning new technology, individuals who could share their knowledge and were open to learning new things. So I worked as an application specialist at GE for 7 years, which brought me a whole new world of opportunity. First, I got to meet sonographers, cardiologists, interventionists, cardioanesthetists from across the country. I got to see how different labs operated. And I had two main objectives in this role. So one was I worked alongside a sales team where I got to demonstrate our equipment and all its capabilities to sites that were purchasing equipment. And the second, which I think I loved the most, was once a site purchased our equipment, I got to sit alongside sonographers and cardiologists and show them how to use our equipment and also customize to make their lives easier. So in my latter years as an app specialist, I had the opportunity to connect more at the development of technology level and had the opportunity to actually travel to some of our make centers. This was really cool. I had the opportunity to test and trial new things that were coming out, like 3D at the time, understanding what our engineers were developing and my role on how it could benefit sonographers and physicians to make us more efficient allowed me to see the full circle of our capabilities. These clinical roles, so I was a clinical application specialist, my territory was Ontario, isn't something that's just fixed to that. You can do it at a regional level, you can do it at the global level. So we have global clinical specialists who work directly with engineers. I stayed on the clinical path, but there's also clinical application specialists who move into sales and really are are some of our best sales reps because they understand what our users need so they can speak and sell very easily. So I remember being, I'm just going to take you back into my apps days. And I remember one of my first weeks, I was asked to support the install training at Mount Sinai here in Toronto, and they were doing stress echoes, and they needed help setting up protocols. So at St. Mike's, when I left, we hadn't started stress echo yet. So similar theme with some of my first experiences clinically. I had never done stress echo, and now I was going in as the expert on a machine and had to train them stress echo. So although I knew the theory behind it, if there was a place to learn at the time, this was the place. The charge tech and cardiologist had at least 15 different protocols that they asked me to build on our system. Treadmill, bike, dobutamine, so many different ones. And I was going to see this all happen and make it all happen within a week. So having never performed them, I was very proficient with them. I was very transparent with them. And I told them that I'm very proficient on setting up the protocols in the machine. I can make that happen, no problem. I would just need directive from them on exactly what they needed. And they were awesome. I spent a lot of time in their lab, especially on their stress days, and they taught me a ton. A similar experience came up when I was asked to demonstrate our system at our pediatric hospital in Toronto. The only pediatric and congenital training I had was in theory in a 6-week course. I believe it was 6 weeks through Mohawk. To add to the stress, we had just released the very first 3D transthoracic probe, and sick kids wanted to see that in action. So again, being very forthcoming with my expertise on the system and lack of experience in pediatrics, I told them that I would follow their lead with what they needed, but I could help them make the system sing. This was a great opportunity for me. I spent a significant time at Sick Kids with our clinical application specialist. We had one on the team who had spent most of her career in pediatrics. So I spent a lot of time learning from her. So really, my goal here is to tell you that the beauty of being a sonographer is that you will always be learning. There's always an avenue to explore and discover. And there are always investigations ready to happen to find all the pieces needed to help make the diagnosis. So our clinical team at GE grew significantly over the years, and a new role to manage the entire ultrasound team, so not just cardiac. That opportunity came up, and this would take me away from the field completely, but it was an opportunity to manage a great team and learn other skill sets. I learned in this role a lot about people and myself, how to work with people who were not like me or did things differently than me, how to lead a team, I had the opportunity to hire, to train, and it gave me a chance to mentor and coach others who were eager to do other things in their career. It gave me the opportunity to work from home and not be on the road so much. And at the time, I had a very young family, so it just all made sense. I also became more comfortable with my computer and technology from an administrative side. These skill sets, honestly, I would never have imagined them as I started my career as a sonographer. I learned a ton. I also realized that my passion for being in the clinical world and in front of patients and customers, so sonographers and clinicians, was something that I definitely needed to get back into. So I managed a team for 10 years, very long time, but an opportunity then came up for product management. And this role required product management and cardiovascular ultrasound. So this role required an understanding of the market, cardiovascular ultrasound market in Canada, what our customers needed, what the business expectations were with targets to meet, how to bring a product to market, what our market in Canada is asking for, how specific features would impact our roles as sonographers and clinicians to provide optimal patient care. So I knew there was a lot to learn, but using the skills that I required in my various roles and through many different experiences, I knew it would be a good challenge for me. So it's been just over 4 years that I've been the product manager for cardiac ultrasound at GE. And in 2023, I was also given the women's health ultrasound portfolio. So that's our OB/GYN portfolio. So I'm still learning. I didn't know anything about OB/GYN and never scanned that clinically, but I did know about fetal echo. So like I said, I'm still learning. I'm learning their workflow, their needs, They use a ton of different transducers. And I'm also getting to know this segment of specialists and sonographers. I don't have a finance background, so I think if you were to ask me today what's my biggest challenge in this role, it's me still getting proficient with margins and quotas, but we do have financial experts who I rely on heavily, and I still do ask a lot of questions. If you ask me what the most rewarding part of my role as a product manager, it's really connecting with KOLs, so our key opinion leaders across the country, sonographers and clinicians, understanding their pain points and what they need from industry, and then sharing that with our developers, and watching how innovation comes to life and impacts patient care. Most rewarding. So I am very excited to be back using more of my clinical expertise. I love learning from clinicians and sonographers on what they need from industry to help make us more efficient, and how we can help, we as industry, help prevent repetitive strain injury, how we can make it easier to diagnose. And taking that feedback and sharing it with our engineers is so important, as this is how evolution in technology has happened. We do need to embrace change. I know it's hard, but it can lead to great things. Systems, in terms of technology, systems have become more compact. Probe sizes and weight have decreased. Automation is here. AI is embedded in our systems. We need to embrace it. There is better image quality than there was years ago. 3D has become the norm. Strain has become the norm to assess function. And I think one of the big things right now that we're seeing a ton of growth is in the structural heart space. So as procedures are, on the rise, percutaneous procedures are on the rise, like clips that are being done routinely. If there's an area I encourage you to learn more about, this is the space. And if I can leave you with a few thoughts, I think it's really important that you take every opportunity as an experience. Some will be positive, and some may not be. But don't forget, that's how we learn and evolve. Network. Our sonography world is so small. I promise you, you will run into people. Again, in your career, you will cross paths again, I promise. Don't forget about what you, don't be afraid of what you don't know. We are always learning as sonographers. Technology is also constantly evolving, so you'll never know it all, and that's okay. We are really never too old to start or try new things. And this came across my LinkedIn feed, and I hope you don't mind, Dr. Chow, but I thought this was a great way to leave you off, that it's really, truly never too late to try new things.
That's the first time I did that.
Yeah.
Shades.
Yeah.
So this is like the most likes that I ever had in my LinkedIn post. It's like, this guy can actually exercise from all across the country. So it's really very interesting. Anyway, I do a lot of these just to motivate my patients to actually exercise. That's one of the challenges. Our patients are not exercising or doing what they're supposed to do. So that was really fantastic. So maybe
open to questions.
Open to questions, especially we have
comments,
many different levels or experience in our groups of sonographers. So now is your time to ask questions of things that you really want to know.
No judgment. Come on.
So I'll ask you.
Sure.
You allude to it a little bit, but the hard part of you're early on is the traveling.
Yes.
And I think you suggested there are different ways to sort of do that, but maybe a little bit more about that piece.
Sure. So I was lucky enough that I lived in a sort of central location. So I covered Ontario. But, you know, at the time, there were only a few of us that covered Canada. So I did have to travel outside of Ontario quite a bit. So it was, I would say, very exciting the first few years. And for some, that doesn't go away. I got to see parts of Canada that I've never seen, and hospitals in the most remote areas. So I got to learn a lot. It can get challenging after some time, especially, if things are personally affecting you, like children. In my case, it was a young family. So that's sort of where I knew I needed to make.
So how long, like if you go somewhere, how long do you have to stay?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So normally, it could be anywhere from Monday to Friday to a simple overnight. You obviously are working around the customer's schedule. But if I was traveling out west, normally I would be traveling on a Monday. We try to limit, let's say, Sunday travel, because that makes it hard. And would spend Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sometimes up to Friday at noon, and then travel home. Managing the clinical team, I actually really learned a lot more about work-life balance, because me living in Ontario, when I was an application specialist, I got to drive to most places, and was on a plane not as often as, let's say, our clinical application specialists who lived in the West. So some of our clinical team who live in the West live, let's say, in Alberta or BC, but they cover everything west of Ontario. Okay. And that's simply because there are pockets, right? Whereas where I was located in southwestern Ontario, there's a ton of activity here. So I, as a manager and learning that asking them to be on a plane every week was grueling. I actually would have biweekly one-on-ones, and we would go through the next month of their schedule, and we would make sure that there was days at home in between, and I would do regular check-ins to make sure that the burnout wasn't happening, because it can happen very easily. And I encouraged them to raise their hand if I hadn't noticed that they had been on the road for several weeks. And the other part was when they were home. So if they were home on a Friday and their administrative work was done, we had to complete reports at what we did at sites. The other important thing was that was their time, get to appointments and get all their things done. So there was a beauty of flexibility, and I did get to own as an application specialist myself, but then as a manager of that team, they owned their own schedule to a certain degree. We had to be on site when customers needed us. But, when you were going back for a follow-up, you managed your schedule, you managed your travel, your flights, and so on.
So if you have an elevated speech, a young sonographer just starting the career, walk into the elevator with you, it's like, you've gone through a lot, you've done a lot of different things. So what are the 3 things that you would, encourage young sonographers to do?
So definitely early in my career, I would encourage them to spend time in the reading room. I think that's where I learned the most.
You didn't find them scary?
Some were. Some I would just sit and kind of listen, and some I felt a little bit more open to questions. And especially in academic centers, fellows are great. They usually will share a lot as well. So I would encourage them to spend time, ask questions to fellow sonographers. So I remember, we were a small group back then. We only had
around 6 at the time.
Yeah, no, I think we were 4. We're 4. And I remember just pulling someone else in and saying, "Can you have a look at this? I'm unsure." And that was okay here. We created that normalcy. I also came into a lab where they hadn't had a new sonographer in like 15 years. I was much junior than the ones that had been here. So they were great, but I would encourage creating that open door policy in your lab and with each other. So that would probably be number 2. I would tell a young sonographer. And I think the third would be to stay on top of technology and sort of what's leading edge, especially if you are eager to do more and learn more, is take these little opportunities, be a part of accreditation. You know, if someone's asking you to speak, you know, presentations are never easy. You know, I've been doing this for a long time and I still don't find, but the more you do them, the easier it becomes. And I would encourage them, even as a young sonographer, you know, sometimes coming out of school, they're learning things that I didn't learn 25 years ago. And there's value, you have value as well.
GE send you to meetings like the annual, you know, the ASE or the CSE?
Yes.
So you got to attend
Yes.
that learning opportunity.
Yes.
But they're booth duties.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They're booth duties.
So early in my career, I actually got to attend the ASE a few times. We always support the ASE, but I actually got to have sort of half and half duties where I had to be part of booth and support the machines in the booth, but I also got to attend some of the sessions because I was still learning. We still encourage that even with our new clinical application specialists. It's really how you can stay on top of leading edge. Oh, yes, so there are questions.
Oh, that's the interview coming through. Oh, there you go. So here, this is a question. I'll just read it out.
Mhm.
Thank you for the motivation. I haven't encountered an AI in echocardiography. I don't mind adopting it, but there's a fear that it might replace us. What's your take on that? And the next one will be.
Oh, yeah, I can start with that.
Why don't we start with the question number 1 first?
Sure. So, great question. And we get asked this a lot. People say, "Oh, you're putting all this AI on your machines. Is it going to take our jobs away?" So absolutely not. The goal behind the AI is to really make your lives easier. And really the focus is on our ergonomics. For instance, we have automated measurements. And I would say my most favorite still is our automated tracing spectral, because as you all know, when someone's in atrial fib, or if you're doing, I don't know what your standard is in your lab, but if you're doing 5 traces on every, on every Doppler, like it's a lot. It's a lot. So if the machine can do that, and then I can just tweak it on my own. I mean, what we assess is like how many clicks, how much of this it's saving. Okay, so that's really the goal behind our AI tools, is really making your lives easier, your workflows more efficient, saving our bodies and shoulders.
The one thing with GE machines, you can't tweak the points.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Philips, where you can adjust each point.
Yeah, it will depend on where you're at in the release. So we've evolved quite a bit since.
It may still be done.
Yeah, we're not there.
Yeah, so there's I mean, with each release, there's new options and opportunities, but it's definitely a way industry is moving towards. And we get asked that a lot, and not even just from scanning, but with reporting, right? Why can't AI, if we can put this into a program and ask it to do this and this and this for it, we should be able to do that with reporting, right? And why can't measurements automatically create censuses based on guidelines? So all those things are happening.
Yep, the second part to all this. And are there opportunities offered by GE for sonographers in the third world to come and learn new technologies at resourceful center like the one in Canada, so as to increase the coverage of the new technology.
Hmm.
Yeah, we do
So-
have international attendees.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we do offer a lot of webinars. So we do provide a lot of education that really is accessible by anyone.
It's a campus, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is a virtual campus that everyone can go in.
Yes, and then we do have a learning institute in Milwaukee, specifically for ultrasound. So not just cardiac, but all our ultrasound segments. And we have an education team that just does education. So yes, we have that opportunity for sonographers to come. They're usually 2-day courses. They basically teach you the system like from the inside out. But then we also have additional workshops on 3D imaging, strain imaging. We have position-led ones for TEE. So that's one thing we do. We also now bring the education class to the site. So we found with large labs and in academic centers, especially, or remote centers, where it's very costly to bring people into the US, we also can bring that education team to the site, which is less disruptive and also less disruptive to the everyday working, like your lab, but also gives the opportunity for multiple sonographers, limitless in terms of class attendance. So everyone can get a piece of the education.
So we have lunch and learn from different ultrasound vendors. So that's very helpful. Often served with pizza. So thank you. Okay, any other questions?
A question about vascular ultrasound. So you were doing cardiac and women's. Where is vascular? I mean, our lab, we have vascular and echo side by each.
Yes.
Actually, I had a view back in the day that we could cross-train everybody to do both. That failed. Just wondered about, smaller places where.
Yes, where there's shared service, because they have one machine and it has to do everything.
Necessarily, you
Mhm.
you need both, but you can't really, from a volume point of view, necessarily justify. So is there, does anybody think about that kind of stuff?
Well, so
Cross-training?
we see it a lot in more remote areas, I have to say, where sonographers do a lot of what we call shared service.
Right.
They've done, most of them I would say are very GI, general imaging trained or vascular trained, and they've done a little bit of echo. So then they'll have some that, will use different machines and do, because they're not doing a ton of echo, but more GI, they'll spend more time, let's say with the general imaging machine. I wouldn't say we see a ton of vascular out there. It's a very, very special skilled market. I'm looking at my friend in the back.
It is more likely to be mixed with each other. With although in the States, there are places that will actually do both. I think the Americans are much more likely to mix echo and vascular.
Yes.
But I know in Canada, it's very much GI, general imaging.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mix with the echo. I don't know why, because
it's
it just depends on the package they buy, but it seems to tend to stick with general sound. And it is a very small portion. We're struggling.
I think I asked this because like in the lab, though we are in the same department, vascular and echo, because I'm interested to cross-train in vascular. I have like a little background in vascular. I was told that it's because we have we have different union, that's why we can't do it. Even though I would love to cross-train in vascular, but because of the union, we're not allowed.
That's interesting.
That does have implications too.
Yeah.
The union does, because we get paid to.
Okay.
What if you're just part-time in echo? Can you work as a part-time in vascular?
We tried to hire a general sonographer to do vascular part-time, and they would come on.
Oh,
Okay.
Artificial boundaries,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I remember when Texas
Yeah.
did one.
So Nadia, a question from Grace.
So when you're hiring like with machine application specialists, do you do in-house training? Because scanning a patient is different.
We do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes. And one of the biggest, I would say, hurdles to get over moving from scanning to a clinical role is, really learning to demonstrate equipment. And, we always want to get our hands in there because that's what we've been doing. And then managing your time, because it's very different than going to a site, going to work and you've got your set hours and you're done. Especially the first few years as a clinical application specialist, you're always preparing for your next site, right? And what are they looking for in their lab? So there's a big learning curve, but there's a ton of training that we do before we let you out into the field.
I do have a question. What happens if you go to a site that is poor quality? How do you can you upskill skills? And if you're looking at something and you're like, wow, that's not so great, how do you deal with that?
That's a great.
Because you know what I mean, you're gonna
We need to repeat the question for the online audience. So the question is, what if Nadia traveled to certain labs which has a lower quality or maybe not up to par, up to standards? How you would deal with that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because it happens. It happened a lot in my early career, especially because accreditation wasn't a thing. So there was no one really validating standards. I have to say I would make suggestions where it could, but I had to bite my tongue a lot. And definitely, make sure that loved ones weren't going to those places. No, but really, honestly, just sharing as much as I could. There's a fine line between telling someone how to do their job, but making suggestions was the way I would sort of gently try and see what their reception was like to change or for improvement. And sometimes I would actually use stories because I feel like storytelling gives the message without being so direct, right? And that comes obviously from experience, but yes, not an easy thing to manage, but an opportunity for clinical application specialists, sonographers, to share their knowledge. It's all basically, it really depends on how it's received, right? And because you really can offend, and also the challenge. I've also been in sites where someone's been doing this longer than I have, and have been scanning longer than I have, and trying to show them something new. It wasn't always easy either, and so taking a step back and what I would do is actually watch them scan and watch their workflow and actually take their lead and sort of step in and provide suggestions that would maybe make their life easier, or say, things like, try this because we're testing this out, and let me know what you think, and really trying to get their feedback, and slowly sometimes we would get adaptability though.
So maybe I'll ask another question. So being a senior executive as one of the leading international global healthcare company, you have to manage a lot of people. So if you wish to tell young people what skills they should acquire along the way in their education, what are the skills that you would encourage them, especially in the new world of artificial intelligence, which is going to take away certain jobs? As I listened to Dr. Jeffrey Hinton this weekend, very interestingly, he always cautions us about, AI is coming to take certain jobs away. And when asked, what you would recommend your children to do, he said actually being a plumber. Quote, end quote. So that's actually the news last Friday. So what are the skills that young people, or even people in the middle career,
or late career in this case, what kind of skills that you would recommend them to acquire along the way?
Well, I think I mentioned a few when you asked about my elevator pitch, but I think it's important that they stay in touch and very close to the digital space. I think that's where things are going. I think it's important to be able to speak to people and interact. Although we've become a very digital world, I still think it's really important to not always hide behind the screen. I think it's important to be able to communicate with people. I think it's important to keep your knowledge, your learning open to all different avenues. So like finance is never been my thing, but I have to know it for this job. And do I love it? No. But do I know enough? Yes. Is there an opportunity for me to learn more? Yes. And I think being open to that is a big skill set, is, being open and being uncomfortable with things, being comfortable with things that you don't know. And it's okay. And it's okay. And we all have to learn. Because I think sometimes we have this expectation that when we start a career, that we need to be the experts like right away. And that's just not true, and it's not going to happen. I mean, we really can bring something new to the table, I feel, because I feel like learning today in school is very different than when I learned. And so I feel like, new clinical application specialists, let's say, on the industry side, or new sonographers might know things that we weren't really taught. But so I think that there's value that a young person brings to a career, but I also think you have to keep an open mind that you are starting your career and you should be open to learning from others.
So my message to the young people is, number one, develop your people skill. It's even more important now with artificial intelligence, because being a typist or being someone who just like transcribe things or manage things in a very menial way, it's not going to get you through your career. So having people skill is actually very important for now. And then the other message I would give to people is actually what Steve Jobs said in the Stanford commencement speech: stay hungry and stay curious all your life, because everything that, like, more than I think 80% of what I learned in medical school is no longer true. Like now HIV is actually not, a deadly disease. Lung cancer is actually, people survive much longer than actually 3 months. So and this list goes on and on. That many things that I learned is no longer true. So you have to keep learning and keep staying curious. Questions? Okay,
yes.
So with that in mind, we want to thank you for taking us down a trip down the memory lane.
Yeah.
Brings back lots of great memory as we all transition through this wonderful journey of echocardiography. And thanks for taking the time to come all the way. It's always wonderful to see you at different situations, including all the national meetings and also, certain Lunch and Learn. So it's wonderful to have you as one of our former alumni. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you.